As you would have heard before, that Mr. Merritt Herbert was a philanthropist, and the hospital, Alexandria Hospital, and the Flamboyant Nursing Home were beneficiaries of his generosity. Each year he would make a significant contribution to the hospital and the home, and that is used towards making the Christmas for the patients and the residents at the home to be a brighter one. We developed quite a relationship with Mr. Herbert. He was very close to the nurses. On his several visits to the island, he would always come and visit us at the hospital and at the Flamboyant Nursing Home. In fact, he used to contribute to the home when it was called the infirmary, but now it is the Flamboyant Nursing Home. So we are here today to indicate our appreciation and love for Mr. Herbert. And he knew that while he was alive, because we expressed that to him. But we are here today to provide some support for the family and the friends of Mr. Herbert. We will render an item in song. We have persons here from different areas of the hospital. We have our Minister of Health with us today, Mr. Mark Brantley. Thanks for coming. And we have the hospital administrator. We have retired nurses, we have nurses from the community, and we also have Miss Webb. She's a retired assistant matron. Former matron Maureen Stapleton was supposed to be here. I guess she didn't get here yet. But, oh, she's here? Oh my, sorry. We are all here to demonstrate our love and appreciation for, we used to call him Uncle Merritt too, because we were so close to him. So we'll do a tribute in song. At this time, we are reminded of God's love for us. So the song will be, "Oh, how marvelous and oh, how wonderful." And I hope it will be a source of blessing to the family. Thank you.
I stand amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene, and wonder how he could love me, a sinner condemned unclean. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful,
Just want to say thank you to the nurses and I guess the Nurses Association for rendering that item, cheering us up this morning. At this time, we're going to call on the local preachers to do their bidding. So please come, time is against us. So thank you, local preachers. Seems as if nobody liked to clap for the local preachers. You can still have some cheer, even though it's a funeral, you can still have some cheer. Mr. Merritt Herbert was a cheerful man, not because he's gone. You can still have some cheer. At this time, we call on the Honorable Alexis Jeffers to give his word. Mr. Jeffers.
Thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. Well, I first have to start by saying I am humbled to be asked to give a short tribute this morning for dearly departed brother and uncle, Merritt Herbert. Many of you may be surprised seeing me here and wondering, why am I here standing this morning? But I have known Uncle Merritt for many years. Many persons in here may be much closer to him, would have been much closer to him than I am. But of course, my connection to him came through his nephew, Webo. And of course, many of the trips that Mr. Herbert would have made here to NEVIS, I would have interacted with him even for a brief period of time. But be that as it may, he would have certainly brought to me some qualities and characteristics that I do believe that many of us in here, including myself, would want to emulate. I also want to say that Merritt, of course, was born in this very area, Mount Lily, of course. And indeed, I am speaking from the standpoint of the representative for St. James Parish and the people of St. James. Indeed, when we would have known someone to have grown up here and they leave these parts and go abroad, we want them to take the qualities that they would have had growing up in this neighborhood. So I believe Mr. Herbert would have taken some qualities with him to the British Virgin Islands. And of course, the British Virgin Islands would have been the recipient of a son of the soil who would have done exceedingly well in Tortola and beyond. But let me speak specifically about his exploits in terms of the establishment of an institution that has meant well to the island of Nevis, the Caribbean, and also further afield. And I say further afield because with technology these days, Von Radio is not just an institution for us to love here on the island of Nevis. But of course it is what? Maybe about 10:30 minutes to 11 in the night in Asia. And I would have listened to Von Radio all the way to Asia a few weeks ago. As a matter of fact, at 9 o'clock in the morning there on a Wednesday morning, it was 9 o'clock here on a Tuesday night when I listened to a segment of the Let's Talk program. So that is the reason why I brought that up, because we sometimes forget that as small as we are being heard near and far, far and wide. And that is why I believe the station would have had this mantra or motto that we should always have respect for each other, respect for the station, and respect for those who are hosting a program of some sort on the radio station at any given time. So that mantra of respect is one that I believe Merritt would want all of us to embrace throughout the rest of our life. And I believe it is through that respect that Von Radio has gained the type of regard and respect, if I were to use that word again, throughout the entire world. But what would have caused Merritt to form this particular institution? I believe his love for Nevis would have led him to establish Von Radio in 1988. And it's through that love that we as Nevisians are beneficiaries of his visionary thinking, his love for the island, also the fact that he would have built a station, and as many would say, may not have even gotten much returns from it in terms of monetary returns. But I believe his overall appreciation of what he did was the fact that Nevisians used it to their benefit, and also the station was used to the benefit of all. I want us all to continue to embrace this radio station, Von Radio, and keep the legacy of Mr. Merritt Herbert alive, because of course that radio station, Von Radio, continues to set the trend for many others who would have come and gone. And the reason why some have gone is probably because they were established for the wrong reasons. The reason why Von Radio is still here is because it has been established for all of the right reasons. And we want to use it to our benefit for all of the right things that it can do for us as a nation. So let us continue to support this station. Remember, Mr. Herbert's legacy will be here with us for a long time to come through that radio station. And indeed, it behooves us to ensure that it continues to do what is good, not only for Nevis, but for the entire Caribbean and the world at large. I want to say my deepest sympathy to the surviving family members, his wife, brothers, sisters, nephews, nieces, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I think there's a great-grandchild or more. But I want to say my deepest sympathies to everyone. And keep in mind that we're here for you and you're here for us as well. We'll all lift each other up. And there are some words or lines in a song that Jesus comes in the midst of the storm to deliver his children from harm. Many of you know that song. When the storm gets so rough, he will say that's enough. Jesus comes in the midst of this storm and he's here with us today, and he'll ensure that all of us are protected and we'll all continue to be a happy family moving forward. Thank you very much for listening, and my deepest sympathies once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffers. I know how it is, politicians. At this time, we call on the staff, Von Radio staff, to give their tribute. So would you come now, please, because we are pressed for time.
As proud employees of the Eastern Caribbean's powerhouse Von Radio, we would first like to say how proud we are of the vision and foresight that was demonstrated by Mr. Herbert to establish a radio station in NEVIS. Of course, we are all aware that Von Radio has revolutionized broadcasting in the Federation and has certainly become a force to be reckoned with, not only here in St. Kitts and Nevis, but throughout the entire region, and I dare say around the world. Von Radio has developed a reputation that is the envy of numerous other broadcast entities throughout the region. We at Von Radio would remember Mr. Herbert as a very cool, calm, and composed individual. He was very pleasant and easy to talk to. We would remember him as the tall and imposing but very quiet person. Whenever he visited the station, which was quite often, he sometimes kept his distance from the staff, which may have been on purpose to prevent us from thinking that he was checking up on us. However, he always had a very keen interest in what was taking place there. He would generally make brief visits to the newsroom to find out what was in the news and what were the big stories. He would always encourage the newsroom staff to keep on the ball and to keep up the good works. Mr. Herbert was serious about quality work, an attribute that he has passed on to the manager of the station, Mr. Herbert. Those of us who listen to Morning Inspiration program would also know that he made his presence felt whenever he visited NEVIS. For me personally, we had a very special bond which was developed through our mutual love for agriculture. Every time he was on the island, he ensured that he visited me either on a Saturday or Sunday evening when I was on air for us to chit-chat about agriculture, what was happening on his farm in Tortola, and how things were evolving in the sector here on NEVIS. And of course, he always had some encouraging words for me. Had it not been for Mr. Herbert, the man to whom we pay tribute today, and someone who richly deserved every accolade, there would not have been a Von Radio today. I must also add that had he placed the management of Von Radio into the hands of anyone apart from Webo, that station would not have gained the recognition, credibility, and reputation that it enjoys today. In essence, Mr. Herbert had foresight in every regard. Mr. Herbert, as you laid the emotionless, rest assured that Von Radio is in good hands. You have left a legacy of which we, the employees of Von Radio, are all happy to be a part of. We owe you a debt of gratitude. The staff of Von Radio would like to convey our sincerest condolences to the entire Herbert family, but in particular his wife, children and grandchildren, to all of his relatives and friends, and especially our boss, Mr. Everett Webo Herbert. We would also like to extend condolences to our radio family at ZBVI, as well as the employees of the Bargain Center and Wild Rose Furniture Store in Tortola. Your loss is our loss, and your pain is our pain. He will be sadly missed by all of us. I'm sure by now that he is already wearing his headphones at the radio station in Glory, and in his spare time growing his pineapples in the Lord's garden. As we say goodbye to our visionary leader, 3 cheers to him for a job well done during his earthly sojourn. Only the best will do. May his soul rest in eternal peace.
Thank you very much for that tribute towards Mr. Merritt Herbert. At this time, we call on the Honorable Mark Brantley to give his tribute at this time.
Good morning, church. I will try to be brief, and simply to say that it is in a way strange that I've been asked to give a tribute, because I, unlike others, did not know Mr. Herbert well. I met him only on a few occasions, but on those few occasions that I met him, I was always impressed with his quiet humility. I think if there was one word that I would use to describe him, was that he was a humble person. He didn't speak much to me. He always, however, I thought had a particular demeanor about him. And in my view, he was one of those individuals who didn't rely on his words, his vocabulary, his spoken words to impress, but rather he relied on his works. And that is why I believe so many are gathered here today, and so many in the British Virgin Islands and here in the island of Nevis, the wider St. Kitts and Nevis, and indeed all throughout the Caribbean, will forever remember the name of Merritt Herbert. He was one of those persons, I thought, who contributed far, far beyond the measure of his years here. You have heard of Webbo, his nephew, and I would have known the little I knew of Merritt through Webbo. You would have heard of Von Radio, and others have spoken eloquently to what Von Radio means and continues to mean to all of us. I feel that the measure sometimes of our lives is not what we acquire. It's not the cars and the homes and the money. It's really the extent to which we have served others. And in that regard, I think that Mr. Herbert stands among the pantheon of greats as someone who has truly served others. He's known to have revolutionized broadcasting in British Virgin Islands, his adopted home, and to have done the same here in the island of Nevis and the wider St. Kitts and Nevis, where he was born. And I think that those contributions are going to live long, long, long after his mortal remains are laid to rest. And so to his family, I want to extend my very deep condolences, my dear friend Delka, and the entire family, to say how truly sorry we are that we have lost him, but that you can be comforted in the thought and in the knowledge that his contribution, whilst here on earth, is one that will be remembered, and a contribution that goes well beyond that of many. And so each time we tune into Von Radio, each time we hear Von Radio, each time we hear the radio stations that he has in the British Virgin Islands, I think we will remember Merritt Herbert. For my part, I will simply say that I myself have been afforded the opportunity to be on radio now for I think over 20 years because of Merritt Herbert. And he may not have known who I was, but I recall getting a call from Webbo a long time ago and inviting me on a program. I was much slimmer then, but they said I was invited to be a heavyweight. And perhaps that is why I've gained weight over the years, trying to live up to the heavyweight mantra. But that aside, I believe that Mr. Herbert has helped so many. He has helped me. And I want to thank him and thank his family for the gift that they gave to us, the gift that was Merritt Herbert. May his soul rest in peace, and may his family accept my very deepest condolences. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brantley. And let me welcome, we're happy to have from the BVI, delegate from the BVI, who's here with us. At this time, I'm going to invite the Honorable Joseph Parry to give his tribute.
Good morning, Church. Since the passage of Hurricane Irma I've sought several updates on the recovery effort of St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands and the welfare of Nevisians there. I speak to Senator Roosevelt David. One day I mentioned that Merritt Herbert had passed and his body would be buried on the island of Nevis, his homeland. Roosevelt said to me, "Walcott, Merritt was an iconic figure in the whole Virgin Islands." That simple statement triggered a flood of memories that took me way back to a time when we all dreamed of a better life beyond the shores of Nevis, and dared to imagine that day will come that by our concerted efforts we would elevate Nevis to a position of envy once again in these Caribbean islands. Like the young boys of his time, Merritt would have traversed Combermere and Mount Lily, would have played cricket at school, and would have gone swimming at the Newcastle beach. He must have imagined one day that he'll be a great cricketer, a great boatman, an international businessman. Those dreams would be nestled in his bosom when he decided to leave the security of his homeland to venture forth in search of an opportunity to make a better life for himself and his family. He would have started small. Quiet he was and polite, attributes which served him well in this new land. Hard-working and ambitious. That would have impressed. The seeds of his success were germinating and would flower and bloom to create the great man he became. Some would say he strode or bestrode the Virgin Islands like a colossus. But that is not my story to tell. The childhood dream of inspiring his countrymen and women gave way to real opportunities to change the face of Nevis. He reached out to like minds, Dr. Simeon Daniel and Eva Stevens, and together, shoulder to shoulder, they etched their mark on this little island. I remember how consumed I was when Mr. Daniel told me that Mr. Herbert wanted to set up a radio station on the island of Nevis that would give Nevis a voice in the Caribbean and build an identity for all Nevisians. How proud we all were on that fateful day when the voice of Nevis flooded the homes of Nevisians and Kittitians too for the first time. That initiative gave Nevis the voice that beckoned other Nevisians to come back home and help to build their country. So did Ward, so did Percy Williams, and many others who invested in this Nevis with other ventures around the island. It is striking and noteworthy that Mr. Herbert walked softly, spoke quietly when he came home. I was always impressed that he would suddenly appear and suddenly disappear. There was no clarion call, no trumpet sounding his arrival. Yet this was a man of worth, of substance, who pulled himself up by his bootstraps. I will declare a great achiever. Today, as I honor and laud him, I declare there are great men and women around us. Greatness is not only associated with politics, but with those who have made sacrifices, built edifices, lift up a people, a country, a nation, who have extended a helping hand to pull his brother and sister along. Merritt Herbert was a great man, a Caribbean man. He, I hope, when our history is written, will be remembered among the leaders who loved, dreamed, and dared to hope that one day NEVIS and Nevisians could stand proudly among their Caribbean brethren and say, we too must be counted. On behalf of my family, on behalf of the NEVIS Reformation Party, I extend condolences to his wife, to his sons and daughters, to his nieces and nephews, his siblings, to that great Herbert family, that you can be proud today and celebrate and thank God that a man like MERRETTS Herbert walked the shores of NEVIS, remembered his country, and bestrode the Virgin Islands like a colossus. May God bless him, and may his soul rest in peace. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parry, Honorable Parry, and all the contributors. At this time, we have 2 minutes for the family final viewing before the casket is closed. So, you have 2 minutes, please.